if we never move from where we are, then we're never going to see what's left for us. I think that sometimes we treat the past as if it's everything. We treat everything that has happened to us as if it's everything that can happen to us or everything that defines who we are, without recognizing that to a subtle extent we define who we are. We are present in the moment and we get to make the choices that lead to certain characteristics. I think in a lot of ways, if we always are stuck in analysis on previous pages, how are we going to write a new story? I feel like anything new has to at first be started in the present. It doesn't start in the past and it doesn't start in the future. Anything that you want to do or want to achieve has to happen in the now. It has to happen where you are. And I think recognizing that is just another subtle reminder that, you sort of have enough influence over your life, or at least over yourself, to make your life at least a little bit better. I think that with myself, it's really about being present enough to make choices that are aligned with what I want. Make the choices that actually benefit me, and so I don't have to feel some type of way about my progression towards my own goals. I think sometimes we put ourselves in a disfortunate position just by our laziness, just by our inaction, just by our inability to see past what has already passed. Sometimes you have to acknowledge new possibilities. You have to acknowledge the newness of every moment in order to get to something new. If you think that everything is going to be a result of the past or everything is going to be exemplary of the past, then there's no point in moving forward. There's no point in being right here where you are. And then when we're thinking about the future, I think a lot of us instantiate these grand goals and instantiate some type of separation between us and the future without recognizing that the future starts right now. You're constantly moving into the future and making it a present moment. And I think in recognizing that, it's about recognizing that the first step reveals the second. Recognizing that each and every one of our efforts in contributions to our own life are contributions to ourselves. Whether or not they actually give you some type of physical thing or some type of material gain is not important. It's about what it does for you inside, not what it gives to you outside. And I think that's always the case. If you get some type of achievement, some type of award, some type of goal, this is that and the other, and you don't like yourself and you don't love yourself and you don't give yourself the support you actually need, that material gain, that material feeling is going to be as fleeting as the object itself. I think we need to recognize that we have to be the ones to give ourselves affirmation and we have to be the ones to carry ourselves in the future. How could you be writing the story wrong if you're the one writing it? How could you be on the wrong path if it's your path? None of this stuff is in reference to other people's stuff. None of this stuff is in reference to any abstraction. It's in reference to what is. And what is your path. And what is what has happened. And it's important to recognize that, accept it, and move forward. The past has passed already, and we need to learn how to let yesterday be yesterday in a real way. Allow ourselves to once again be curious, to allow ourselves to once again have some type of positivity and enthusiasm for the life that we're living and the life that is present. If we don't do that at the very least, then everything's going to be representative of the past, especially in the sense that we're going to reminisce over these times that are present and be like, oh, I wish I would have done this. I wish I would have done that. That was a good time because of this. Without recognizing we can give that appreciation where we are. We can capitalize off of our opportunities right here. And I think the easiest way to do that is to recognize that you can't preoccupy yourself with previous pages the whole time. I think, yes, you have to understand the flow of the story, but that doesn't mean that you can't change the plot. That doesn't mean that you can't change how things go. There's always turning points in stories. There's always turning points in personhood. And I feel like unless you can embrace your own type of turning point, unless you can instantiate that for yourself, then there is going to be no turning point, or at least one that's defined by you. I think sometimes we allow our circumstances to change us completely. And I don't necessarily think that's a wrong thing, but I think a lot of us want to be a catalyst for our own change because we want to change on our own accord. And I think if we allow ourselves to constantly be dictated and changed by external events, then who we are is going to be determined by those external events. It won't necessarily be about how we feel about something or our perspective, but more so what happened and how our fears and how our feelings about that certain something got projected into that event and made us who we are. And I mean that to say that sometimes we get into negative situations or we allow negative events to cloud who we are. We allow negativity to sort of perpetuate itself through our every action, whether or not our actions in themselves are negative. It's more so about the perspective that we have on our actions and the perspective that we have on ourselves while doing it. I think a lot of us need to wake up to the idea that, tiredness is not a lack of ability, it's lack of energy. I think we have to learn to, at least in a subtle way, be disciplined with our desires enough to go toward them. And the easiest way for me to do that has always been to vest it in some sort of self love, to vest it in some sort of idea that I'm doing this certain something for me. I'm not doing it for some type of gain or some type of look or some type of anything, but more so to figure out more of myself and embrace the love I have for myself through expressing myself to myself. I think you always have to embrace yourself through your expression and understand that support is something you give yourself throughout your journey, not something you give yourself at the end or just the beginning. It's a continual thing. And if we can recognize that change happens all the time, and we recognize that change takes time, then we have to recognize that we have to be present in order to make change something beneficial to us inherently. We have to give ourselves the energy that we want to transmute into ourselves, or the energy that we want to have within our growth. So I feel like in that regard, we have to be positive to ourselves. We have to show ourselves a little bit of love in order to feel a little bit of love from the world. Because if we don't have love within us, if we don't have a lot of these things within us, whenever we receive something in the external that gives us that certain something, we depend on it. And I don't think it's necessarily wrong to accept it from the outside world. I think validation in any sense is a good thing. But I think validation to a person who can't validate themselves is not worthwhile. I think we have to learn to validate ourselves so we can actually appreciate the validation we're getting. And not make it solely about ourselves, but appreciation for the person that's saying it, perhaps, or appreciation for the event, rather than just appreciation for what it does for you or how it makes you feel in that very moment. I think we need to sort of open our focus and open our attention into more than just ourselves. Not in a sense of don't care about yourself or don't care about what's going on in your life or don't care about your own goals and aspirations, but recognize that everything is sort of one in this sense. We sort of have to give ourselves to the moment and give ourselves to our expression and give ourselves to our lives so we can be more authentic to who we are. And in that authenticity, I think we inspire other people to be more authentic, and we sort of embrace this idea that beauty is found in our contrast. It's not found in our comparison, but our contrast, how different we are. The most beautiful part about living life as an individual is being able to live it as an individual. The most beautiful part of an individual experience is being able to live it as an individual. I think, of course, we have connection. Of course, we have certain people, certain things that we're connected to, and I think it's important to embrace those connections. But I think we can't truly embrace any connection unless we're connected to ourselves to a subtle degree. We won't recognize the ways in which we are allowing ourselves to be attached to certain ideas. And I don't feel like you have to be super conscious about it in order to have connection and appreciate it. I think you just have to be present enough to appreciate the connection. I don't think you have to be able to articulate it or understand it or do this, that, and the other. You just have to be present enough to appreciate it for what it is and appreciate those person, people, things for what they are rather than you. I think we have to learn to get past ourselves in a lot of ways. We have to learn to turn the page on what has passed and begin to write something new. And that new something has to have you in mind. And when I say get out of your own way, I don't necessarily mean, again, to be negligent of yourself, but to recognize that everything that you do is you. Your perspective that you have, your feelings that you have, your thoughts that you have, in a sense of they impact who you are, they impact how you feel. And I think if we're going to get past that, if we want to get past that, at least at the very least, then it's about being present enough to realize what is you and what's not. It's about taking up the pen in your own hand and writing out something new and giving yourself the validity and strength that you feel like you need for this next chapter of your life, or at least giving yourself the validity and strength to heal from what has happened in the past. I think we have to become new with the moment and recognize that the past is past and nothing that has happened in a real sense is happening now, or at least with certain things. I can't really speak for everybody, and I hope people's situations are beneficial to them, at least to a subtle degree. But I feel like when moving past anything, it's about acknowledging that it's no longer there, or acknowledging that we don't have to hold that perspective that we have over previous things so much so that we live in previous things. I think sometimes we get so caught up in negativity within the past that we bring it into the present. And that's why I feel like when you're constantly stuck on analysis of old pages, all you do is rewrite the same thing. I think that's when the story gets repetitive, when we allow it to repeat itself. When we don't resolve what needs to be resolved, and it constantly repeats. And I feel like our self-loathing and our lack of self-love is one of those things. It's a perpetuated thing. If we don't instantiate some type of self-love, then we're constantly going to be, embellishing ourselves in its absence. We're constantly going to be doing things, at least I feel like, that don't really contribute to who we are. I think we have to be present in self-loving in a way to be disciplined enough to take actions that actually do good for us. Like, there are plenty of things in my day-to-day that I could do. I could just sleep through all my classes. I could be lazy with my aspirations and not really take care of anything, but that doesn't lead to anything good for me. Sometimes we have to, I don't even want to call it a sacrifice. I just want to call it a form of support, a way of cheering for yourself even. I feel like to be disciplined enough to not degrade what you have to do. Like, I was doing it all yesterday. I'm not going to lie, because I was at the gym. I was tired all day. But I was at the gym and I was like, I was just acting groggy. I was acting groggy. Then I remember, like, tiredness is really not a lack of ability. It's a lack of energy. And you just have to not necessarily force, but allow yourself to be truly present within the moment and make the choice to act in accordance to what you want instead of what you feel, in a sense. And I feel like in that way, you'll begin to feel in accordance to how you're acting, or how your perspective dictates what you're doing. And that's why I feel like it's important to recognize how perspective impacts thought, impacts feeling, and how those all contribute to you. I feel like it's all a cyclic thing, and we have to understand we have to interject ourselves in one of those points. And I feel like the easiest thing for me is somewhat perspective or feeling. Just giving myself a subtle amount of affirmation or a subtle amount of perspective that allows me to recognize that whatever I'm experiencing or whatever I'm thinking about a moment is not always characteristic of what is, but more so characteristic of what I am in the moment. Sometimes what I am in the moment is not characteristic of what I want to be overall. It's about being honest enough with yourself to make choices that lead to your best good, that lead to who you are, that lead to what you want to be, that lead to what you want to write in the story that you wish to unfold. But until we give ourselves that strength, until we give ourselves that validity, I don't think we're going to find anything that truly contributes to our longevity. Unless we, I guess, I won't even say like you need to be present, because I think that the present moment is sort of a fleeting thing at times. I think we just have to really dive into our affirmations, dive into our love for ourselves, dive into our appreciation for what is. So we're not so caught up in all the negativity that's present within the world. I feel like those things always exist. Positive and negative are both out there. And it's just about your perspective and what you choose to tune into. And that doesn't mean be negligent of negativity. It means acknowledge it, but don't live in it. If we want to create something positive, we have to live in a subtle amount of positivity. And even if that means confronting the negative, it's about having something in mind that is positive for you so you can actively look for opportunities to change that negative thing into something beneficial. If you have to confront something negative, then it's about trying to have a perspective that allows you to mitigate the issue and allows you to continue to love yourself regardless. I think sometimes we allow ourselves to be dictated, and we allow our love for ourselves to be dictated by external events rather than internal feeling. We're alive. We have this grand opportunity to love ourselves. So what is the, benefit of not doing so? What is the benefit of not giving ourselves that subtle amount of support and subtle amount of love that we want from the world? What you don't get from the world, you can give to yourself, I feel like, in a lot of times. And I feel like any type of inadequacy that we feel that we have within us can be solved partially with affirmation. If you feel like you're not confident enough, it's about affirming yourself in that regard and doing things that align with how you wish to perceive yourself at the very least. I think a lot of times we don't recognize that we're watching ourselves. We're watching too. Just as we think everyone else is watching us, that's really just us watching ourselves. It's us being judgmental of our very actions and judgmental of the ways in which we traverse the world. And I think a lot of us know our subtle desires and what we want for ourselves in the moment. And when we act against that, when we act against, our courage, and sort of vest ourselves within our fear, we compound upon it. We are sort of telling ourselves that whatever the situation is bigger than who I am, or whatever I'm encountering is too much for me to bear, at least in the moment. And I feel like if we're going to move past that, or give ourselves in the moment in a real sense, is to let go of our fear. It's to sort of move forward from it, and move forward from this idea that we need to be dictated by something other than ourselves. And I don't mean that to say that, we can't move forward with who we are, but to say that we have to understand that our life is dictated by how we feel, by how we perceive the life that we live. And it's always going to be like that. And I feel like it's always going to be in reference to the subtle ways in which we treat ourselves, and the subtle ways in which we treat our aspirations and treat our dreams and our goals and whatever it is that we want to bring into our lives. In saying that we are our biggest critic, or we are the people that judge ourselves, or we are the people that are watching our actions, I mean to say that if you're not present, at least in a sense, to choose your actions, then you're definitely going to be present enough to get on yourself for not doing the actions that you actually want to do. I think sometimes we place so much fear within us because we have some type of ego. We have some type of identification with ourselves in some type of moment, to the point where we're unable to act in a way that we feel like risks changing who we are, risks seeing ourselves in a different light. But I feel like in our inactions, sometimes we already do see ourselves in a different light. Like with my public speaking, I'll give an example, because that's what I low-key overcome the most, or what I have overcome. Like, I feel like when I first started doing it, I was worried so much about others' opinions. But it wasn't really me worrying about theirs, it was me worrying about my own. Me worrying about how I think other people's opinions would contribute to the opinion I had of myself. But obviously, to a subtle extent, I had a negative opinion of myself, to the point where I was worried about theirs. And that's why I feel like you have to start with yourself and start affirming who you are, so you can actually move forward and begin to write something new. So if you made it this far in the video, thank you so much. I really do appreciate each and every one of you, and I hope you guys are taking care of yourself. A lot more on the way. Keep being a friend to yourself. Keep doing what you can, what you have, because that's really all we can do. And given that, some people are in hard times, or it may be a hard time for people in general, given the current state of the world and such, hold on to those you love closely, and hold on to yourself too, in a way, by letting yourself go, and letting yourself grow into someone who's fit for any situation you encounter. Thank you. And oh wait,